little quiz for you. The first indigenous president in Latin America cuts poverty by 50%, decreases the influence of the IMF and the World Bank in his country, and spreads the wealth of the oil and gas industry to the people. What do you think happens to a person like that? If you answered deposed by a US-backed military coup, then ding, 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 you are a winner in a really shitty game show. This past weekend, Evo Morales, the president of Bolivia, stepped down following a US-backed coup. He is now in Mexico to avoid threats on his life. And yet, he had just won re-election by over 10 points. Right, mainstream media?
Bolivian President Evo Morales has resigned. Morales announced he was stepping down Sunday afternoon after the military asked him to leave office. An audit indicated there was a clear manipulation in the country's elections last month.
Yes, exactly. The election Morales won was a sham. Just ask Mark Weisbrot, director of the Center for Economic and Policy Research.
Implying that there was something wrong with the result. And so that was picked up by most of the media, but you can look at any website for any major news organization in the world, and no one has yet presented any evidence, and that's because there isn't any. But I think the media has played a huge role by simply repeating over and over again this allegation, which is really nothing at this point more than an unfounded conspiracy theory.
Oh, but it's one of the unfounded conspiracy theories we like. So that means it's totally true. Man, Evo Morales just fled the country on a bullshit premise that he rigged the election. Here in the US, Hillary Clinton has stuck around even after the DNC admitted in court they rigged the 2016 primary elections. Fuck! Wait, what do we have to do to get some of our assholes to flee to Mexico? Our assholes! I mean, our assholes stay here even when they're being impeached. They dig in like goddamn ticks and like parasites, like the TV show Survivor. You always think it's gonna be gone, but it's fucking not. But something else you need to know about Bolivia, it's not alone. It's one of many countries that were involved in the pink tide, the sweep of left-wing anti-imperial governments in Latin America. The poorest people were brought out of poverty. The IMF and the World Bank, which just sink countries into debt, were being kicked out. The oil companies were losing control, and our government hated it. How dare people be brought out of poverty? Listen, if half of the population isn't destitute, do you have any idea how hard it will be to get reservations at nice restaurants? Not to mention there won't be any tickets to the good Broadway shows. I mean, the reason most people enjoy learning about the origins of America in the musical Hamilton is because it's only for rich people. Let's take a look at some of the other leaders of the pink tide. Honduras, Manuel Zelaya. In 2009, Zelaya was removed by a military coup, and then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, with the Obama administration, helped make sure he couldn't regain power. Venezuela's former president, Hugo Chavez. He was the victim of a US-backed military coup in 2002. And even our beloved US military propaganda outlet, the New York Times, ultimately admitted the coup was US-backed, but they said it was unwise. Are they calling it unwise because Chavez defeated the coup and came back to power? Is that what made it unwise? Kind of like if you run someone over, we're trying to run someone over with your car, but you accidentally hit a tree instead. Then you're like, yeah, I tried to kill that guy, but it was unwise. Screwed up my car. But we weren't done with Venezuela. If at first you don't succeed, keep being a bucket of dicks. Chavez's successor, Nicolas Maduro, has just recently defeated yet another US-backed coup attempt. In fact, we're getting so sloppy that our own aid agency, USAID, was recently found to be funding the coup leaders. Jesus Christ! Don't we know how to launder money by now? How tough is that? I I mean, you just give it to a guy and tell him to give it to the other guy. Is that so fucking hard? And if that's not gonna work, then you take the money and you buy a bunch of chickens, okay? Then you give the chickens to the coup leaders and you tell them to sell the fucking chickens. It's not very complicated. Can we get some better goddamn criminals running our empire? But that's not the only way we've tried to bring down Maduro. We're also waging crushing economic war against that country. And speaking of economic sanctions, let's move on to Daniel Ortega in Nicaragua. A US-backed coup was attempted there last year, but it was defeated. How did our Congress respond? Every single member of Congress approved crushing sanctions on the country. Wow. I sure do love it when our Congress people get along. Isn't it nice? It's interesting. They never seem to vote unanimously to help humanity. But when it's war, economic war, or just being generally shitty, it's one big circle jerk. Woo-hoo! Singing Kumbaya all night long. Oh, and how do I know it was a US-backed coup in Nicaragua? Well, yet again, our crappy criminals bragged about it. A publication funded by our regime change arm, the National Endowment for Democracy, NED, boasted about spending millions of dollars laying the groundwork for insurrection against Ortega. Guys, how many times do I have to tell you? Don't brag about our coup attempts. Here, say it with me. Oh, that's odd. I am surprised to see a violent uprising in Nicaragua. I certainly didn't have anything to do with that. I don't know where that truckload of chickens came from. Anyway, I think you're starting to get the point. If you are a leader of a Latin American country that wants to help the poor, fight the banks, and distribute the resources to everyone, as opposed to a tiny, tiny number of billionaires, then the US will try to destroy you. And we haven't even gotten to half of them. The late author and historian William Blum listed many of the names in one of his columns several years ago, and I'll do my best to translate these names into American English. Jacobo Arbenz, Chetty Joggin, Fidel Castro, Jew Goulart, Juan Bosch, Salvador Allende, Michael Manley, I got that one, Michael Manley, Maurice Bishop, Daniel Ortega, Jean Bertrand Aristide, and Hugo Chavez. All Latin American leaders of the past half-century, all progressive, all condemned to suffer the torments of hell for their beliefs by the unrelenting animosity of the United States. Oh, and by the way, if you're wondering who it was that the U.S. worked with to help create the so far successful coup, was it Shakira? Was it the Mexican bumblebee from The Simpsons? Nope, it was Luis Fernando Camacho, a far-right multi-millionaire who rose from fascist movements in the Santa Cruz region. Nothing like a good old hate-filled fascist to help us out, right? Even if you wanted to believe that the U.S. had nothing to do with this, would you find it odd that our media and government always seems to be talking fondly about paramilitary fascists while calling the left-wingers or the socialists or the indigenous evil dictators? Does that seem interesting in the least? No? Well, how about this little tidbit? The top Bolivian coup plotters were trained by the U.S. military's notorious School of the Americas and served as attachés in FBI police programs. Still not intriguing? No? What about one more reason why the U.S. would help create a violent coup right now in Bolivia? You see, we need rare earth minerals because China has a stranglehold on a lot of them. It turns out Bolivia has one of the largest reserves of lithium on the planet. Bloomberg News last year called it Bolivia's lithium dream. That's right, Bolivia is sitting on top of our lithium. And without lithium batteries, we can't make our fucking phones go. I knew that one day we would be at war because of Instagram. I knew it. My battery died and now I can't look at pictures I took of my breakfast. Well, I guess we should just invade Bolivia then. To put a number on it, by 2025, it's estimated that lithium-ion batteries will become a $94 billion global market. Well, guess what? That means our corrupt politicians have 94 billion reasons to be interested in Bolivia. They didn't seem to care so much when it was just snazzy hats. Not a lot of snazzy hat coups going down. But this is not over. Morales' supporters are mobilizing as we speak. The indigenous are fighting back. And let's not forget the people of Venezuela overturned a US-backed coup in 2002. So it's not unheard of. Maybe this whole story will be a lot different by next week. Stay tuned. Coming to you from Washington, D.C., the Belly of the Beast is the Redacted tonight.